The story of John and Jane. John had been in love with Jane for years, but he had never worked up the courage to tell her. They had been friends since childhood, and he didn't want to risk losing her if she didn't feel the same way. Over the years, John watched as Jane dated other men, always hoping that she would see how much he cared for her. But she never seemed to notice. They remained close friends, and John was always there for her when she needed him, even though it broke his heart to see her with someone else. One day, John finally decided to confess his feelings to Jane. He met her for lunch and took a deep breath. "Jane, I know we've been friends for a long time, but there's something I need to tell you," he said, his heart racing. Jane looked at him with concern. "What is it, John?" "I love you, Jane." "I have for a long time," he said, his voice shaking. Jane's face fell. "John, I care about you deeply, but I don't feel the same way." "I'm sorry." John was crushed. He couldn't believe that the woman he had loved for so long didn't feel the same way. They finished their lunch in silence, and John left feeling empty and heartbroken. Over time, John tried to move on and date other women, but he couldn't shake his feelings for Jane. He continued to see her as a friend, but the love he felt for her never went away. In the end, John had to accept that his love for Jane was unrequited, and that he had to find happiness in other areas of his life. He remained a loyal friend to Jane, even though it was sometimes painful to be around her. And he learned that sometimes, love is just not meant to be. As time passed, John found himself struggling to move on from his unrequited love for Jane. He tried to date other women, but his heart wasn't in it. He found himself comparing every woman he met to Jane, and they always fell short. Jane, on the other hand, was going through her own struggles. She had always seen John as a friend, but now that he had confessed his love for her, she found herself thinking about him differently. She started to see all the qualities in John that she had never noticed before: his loyalty, his kindness, and his unwavering support. As Jane began to reconsider her feelings for John, she found herself thinking about what it would be like to be with him. She knew that he would always be there for her, no matter what, and she began to see him in a new light. One day, Jane decided to take a chance and tell John how she felt. She met him for coffee and took a deep breath. "John, I know I didn't feel the same way when you told me you loved me, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately. I think maybe I was too blind to see what was right in front of me," she said, her heart racing. John looked at her with surprise. "What are you saying, Jane?" "I'm saying that I want to give us a chance. I want to be with you, John," she said, her voice shaking. John's face lit up with joy. He couldn't believe that the woman he had loved for so long was finally returning his feelings. From that day on, John and Jane were inseparable. They fell in love, and their friendship blossomed into a deep and meaningful relationship. They knew that they had a lot to learn about each other, but they were committed to making it work. As they sat together, holding hands and looking into each other's eyes, John knew that he had never been happier. He had finally found the love he had been searching for, and he knew that he would never let it go.